Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today is Sam Keith Day and that is why we are looking at the next issue in his The MAXX run for Image Comics. Issue 3, cover dated May 1993. In the MAXX run, I gotta say, it's a weird comic to start off with, and it eventually just gets really weird and got too weird for me at a certain point when I was a teenager. Now, I think that happens in around issues 10 or 11, I want to say, maybe a bit earlier. But since then, I have gone back and collected a few more of the MAXX issues later on in the run. It goes up to 30-something. I am still missing, I do still have some holes in my collection. It's not yet a whole complete run, so, you know, depending on from now until then, if I do get those issues, some of them we might have to jump over. But basically, the one you have before you here, I would say is probably overall my favorite complete issue of the MAXX run. I guess I would say this is what the maxiest of the whole series. As much as my expectations of the series when I was, 12 years old when this came out, I think 1993. Yeah, that makes sense. Going on 13. And what I wanted was to see some cool MAXX action. I'd heard it was a little weird, and sometimes he was in the real world and sometimes he was in another world that's kind of an alternate version of Australia. And from that concept that I'd read about in Wizard and in Comic Book Shop News and all the kind of comic book press at the time, anything you could find, this issue here kind of best represents what I would have liked to have seen, and maybe some of the concepts pushed forward more so than other stuff later on. Like right away when I review next issue 4, it's quite different, and when I get to it, I'll explain exactly why and point out those differences. But the tone kind of shifts with issue 4, where issue 3 I feel is just snap dab right in the middle of what I expected out of this book. First of all, the cover, super cool, just a cool shot of this weird character of the MAXX in a profile. He's got his FU fingers up, whether or not, obviously it was intentional. I think the artist, had a good laugh probably creating that, and I think it's pretty original. Actually, to have the MAXX's middle fingers constantly up. It seems like maybe he's given us key clues here. He's having fun. There's a bit of a Batman kind of thing going on there, that maybe you don't notice right away. But yeah, there's like kind of almost as if the MAXX and Batman have morphed together, right? We're certainly getting a Batman vibe with the rain and stuff. And if we pulled back the camera, maybe he's on the top of a gargoyle at the top of a building somewhere in Gotham, right? And also, eventually we learn in the MAXX series, spoilers, but I mean, it doesn't really matter at this point if you're watching the reviews or not watching for that. The MAXX, it's pointed out, is basically a rabbit at some point, or metaphorically a rabbit. I'm not quite sure. Like I said, the series gets really weird. And when I do my reviews of those issues, hopefully we can address that with a little more detail when we get there. For now, let's stick to, again, what I consider the best pretty much standalone issue in the whole MAXX series, the one that really is what I would have expected from the whole series. Let's have a look inside. Real quick with the credits: story, pencils, ink, Sam Keith; dialogue, Bill Messner-Loebs; finishes, Jim Sinclair. He's kind of like, I guess, an inking assistant, maybe doing backgrounds. Lettering, Mike Heisler and Kevin Cunningham; and colors, Steve Oliff and all the optics. So yeah, one thing about the early MAXX issues, they were colored well, and definitely had kind of a color palette and style that was pretty specific to the MAXX, right? The MAXX looked different in the coloring and stuff than, say, Spawn, right? They definitely, it seems, at least, excuse me, Steve Oliff and all the optics, they kind of adapted the coloring to the artist to a certain extent, which I think is pretty cool. Pretty interesting page to start off with. Like I said, Sam Keith, always a little odd, always kind of avoiding the regular square and rectangular panels and working in some cool design elements and angles and different shapes. And I mean, it still works. We still basically have, a 9-panel grid, but that's been shifted a little bit, like a window almost. It's pretty cool. And of course, all these decorative elements he always adds of just, plant life and feathers and skulls and things. It's kind of a Sam Keith hallmark. I love all that stuff. I think those textures are really cool. Just a very interesting, intriguing first page. And basically we get introduced to kind of the food chain, right? Worm. It's kind of weird. Again, irreverent, clever stuff, I guess. Clever, I don't know, but funny at least. So one of these animals from the outback is the gbichtit, however you want to pronounce it, or outback slug. It can leap nearly a quarter mile straight into the air, but it has never mastered the ability to land. It has no predators. It is just stupid. So a 3-panel gag, basically. And then you've got the northern crabbit here. They jump and land, but it has a natural enemy, the is, or a predator, right? So we've got kind of a rabbit crab hybrid. That's fun. And then we get introduced to the is again, right? When he's in the outback, the ises are white, and when he's in the real world, the ises are black. And of course, the is can jump and land and has no predators unless you count the MAXX, right? So what's happening in this issue, at least, you know, for the beginning here, is the MAXX from last issue has been running after this is, and he's kind of going in and out of reality, our world, and his Australian outback kind of reality that maybe just be in his head. At least that's been hinted at up to this point, or at least we're supposed to believe that, right? So that's where we are here. Once again, super awesome textures, not afraid to do those big bold lines. Sam Keith in all his glory. I think the art is pretty much some peak Sam Keith as well, right? These early issues of the MAXX. The interesting point of view from top down. Anyone, as I said before, I can really respect someone who does that pretty well, because it's a hard shot to do. I think he's pulled it off really well here. Not quite sure where the distinction is between him and his assistant Sinclair for the inks. So sometimes I think maybe some of this stuff was added in by someone else. It looks a little bit different in the line application, but I mean, this is probably all Sam Keith, I think. I like the interesting way in which he worked the logo into the actual panel layout here, and the actual panel rather. That's hard to pull off, so that's clear, and I think it's pretty clear, and we can see it says MAXX, right? It's pretty obvious. And once again, just avoiding those pure squares and rectangles by doing some weird shapes. I don't know if he's consciously just doing slightly rounder shapes and more organic shapes in the outback and slightly more angular stuff in the real world to kind of distinguish them. The chung, that's kind of something that it's appeared before in the series. And it's, I guess, from the distortion from when he shifts between worlds and realities. Always just thought that was, you know, one of the rare shots, or I think we'll have more, but like shots of just his ass, and it's pretty, like, nothing against the ass, but it's just explicitly drawn, and it's just kind of funny, I guess. It's very cartoony, and the posture and all, it just, yeah, it's funny, I guess. I don't have a problem with it, but like, just hilarious. Of course, the MAXX and his giant feet, right? This page here has an interesting kind of coloring effect. I don't know if a filter was put on top or some of the lines were changed, or if this is maybe, because there are instances later where there will be more actual painted art within the comic. But here it seems to be maybe a coloring effect put on top. I think it looks pretty cool. Again, we're playing with different realities and stuff, so the shifting, you know, color style can work. Again, with Sam Keith, also his type of art, it lends itself to that, where I think it works well. Interesting kind of weird panel layouts as well here. You know, you got a splash with some inset panels that I really like as a double page, and also as just a regular page splash when artists do that. I think that always looks cool and works really well. It's a good way to have a really interesting kind of moment without sacrificing storytelling. This page here, I always thought was really cool. It's one of the first instances where I kind of encountered this idea where, you know, you intercut those panels to show two different aspects or to the same scene. And I think this works really well. I mean, yeah, I think there's enough information just in this one little strip here added, you know, even though there's the extra support from these two little thin slices. But yeah, you get enough information that, you know, it's basically a Goodyear blimp. The fact that it's so low to the ground, I guess, would be a little odd in the real world, or at least scary, but, you know, maybe that's the reality of wherever the MAXX lives in here. I think it's New York. So he just keeps kind of, you know, the visual way in which they show that the MAXX keeps flipping back from the real world to the outback is visually just very awesome and interesting, right? And kind of almost like this idea of a shattered window or looking through a window that's been broken, you know? Very inventive, very good design from Sam Keith. And sometimes he'll just throw in like it's kind of a throwaway drawing, right? It's not the best drawing in the world, but like it's just enough for what's needed here. And of course, his own kind of take on the long 90s vertical panel at a slight angle. Gotta be a little bit different, which is why I appreciate Sam Keith. Always trying different things from the other guys. More interesting layouts. The lettering becomes part of the art here, which is cool, right? His head's pounding or something, or, you know, he's having, you know, some sort of issues with his grip on reality, I guess is what that's kind of implying. And I really love this here because we're getting what I like about the Sam Keith. The textures, once again, you know, the organic matter. This could almost be Wolverine and Marvel Comics Presents, right? And all the textures, like he just works in so many textures and works them in well. And the more different textures you have to differentiate different parts, you know, the clearer the art is. So even though he tends to seem to have a slightly dirty, grungy style, everything's very clear and well defined. It's just very skilled at it, drawing weird things, but that are easy to decipher, I guess is maybe how I could put it. Love all these extra little bits of texture here. What is that? I don't know, but it looks cool. And I mean, you know, anyone who's defiance to whatever oppressing force that is upon you, like, what a great oh, that could almost go in like some sort of church, right? The church of fuck you or something. Like, he doesn't have to say it, right? No, I almost hear it. Fuck you. He pulls a McFarlane here. I've seen McFarlane do that, where a panel is just a bunch of sound effects of what's happening, right? So you don't have to show all the violence, and you can get through the story quicker. He's on the top of Iz's here, and then there's just a whole bunch more coming. And I'd like, there's something to the fact that, you know, there's like lots of big stuff happening here. That's why the sound effects panel's a bit bigger, kind of like squeezes down. And then, you know, even the circle here, it just kind of makes everything kind of constrict around the MAXX, right? These Iz's, I think that visual cue is very nice. And how even this whole kind of negative space, or if you will, the panel of this circle panel here, turns into the negative space, and the shapes of all the Iz's running after the MAXX. I think this whole kind of sequence is pretty clever. Very well done. Great double page splash, right? Again, it's a double page splash. Close to 2/3 of the image is the splash, but then we've still got a bit of storytelling here. Moves us along and, you know, leads to an obvious, very obvious page turn. And again here, like pushing it, no pun intended, but pun intended, to the max, with the textures on the legs and stuff. And I mean, there's almost like a Bisley kind of thing here. And I would also say almost like, maybe not so much here, but even this arm, like how quickly was that kind of, you know, drawn and almost thrown away. But this whole image is so cool to me and has so much energy, right? That's kind of, even this, like this quick contour, like that doesn't take a lot of time to draw. You know, he's not spending, you know, hours and hours and hours. He's just kind of barreling through it and doing some very visceral, gritty art. Those great textures on those feathers, once again. That's a pretty penile layout, though, I will say. Slightly phallic. So much black on this page, right? But effective in the story. The netting. His own spin, once again, on that vertical panel. The repetition. The shadows, right? And so he wakes up, we're not quite sure where, some sort of odd Aboriginal bathroom, we're not quite sure. Almost looks like some type of the line work you'd find in Elektra by Frank Miller. Elektra Lives Again. So he's trying to get the drip to stop here. And again, this is where the MAXX gets, this is a good example where it gets really weird. Cool shot of the MAXX once again. Lots of like free flowing curves. The circle motif is pretty much everywhere. And Mr. Gone appears. Obviously, they've got to fight. Like the balls to just do this, you know, draw like so quickly, but so action packed and like so much energy. Not quite sure about the extra little bubbles and stuff for some of the computer coloring, but overall it's good. And the balls to just like, you know, fade everything out into some action lines. I don't even know what's going on here. you know, some cuneiform writing rather than inking, but like it somehow works, right? Makes it seem like he's moving. And he's not skipping on the storytelling either. He's back to a few almost regularly shaped panels, right? Almost. So I like these panels too. When it's one big image but split amongst those panels, you know, slows you down, has you read stuff a little slower. And all of a sudden we're back in the real world. So it's like I said, that concept of MAXX alternating between the real world and the Australian outback is never illustrated more, I think. I mean, there's other moments in the series where it happens, but I mean, this is the most explicit issue where that happens. And it doesn't mean that I'm in any way, you know, less confused about what's actually going on with the storyline and stuff. Even today, it's like, it's not the easiest thing to follow. You know, there's a lot of metaphysical stuff that's mixed into there. And like I said, focus will shift to other characters and their psyches and, you know, their interior world and stuff. It gets very deeply psychological in an odd way where it's not your typical, or what we thought would be a fun kind of typical Image comic. The MAXX was not. So the artwork was promising, but yeah, as issues moved along, as I said before, I kind of lost interest. Just because, you know, when you're 12, 13, 14 years old, this isn't the kind of stuff that's really your focus. It really became an auteur series, which is, you know, auteur in French, author series, I guess you'd say in English. Very specific to Sam Keith's vision, and although I, you know, really enjoy his artistic vision, his storytelling material and storylines and stuff maybe eventually not so much, right? And that's just me being honest. Even today, it's not necessarily something that interests me that much to get into, but I do love reviewing the issues just to have kind of different point of view on it than when I was a kid. And there is still a lot of great artwork to kind of go over and talk about for sure. Here's another interesting one. Like, you know, if you look closely, if you have the comic at home, it's probably really small on the screen here, but these moments here, right, where you see that like the drawing is so basic, it's pretty much stick figures or almost. And then it just, you know, they get bigger and bigger here. And the way he draws the MAXX, where he's basically like Humpty Dumpty with a butt crack, I always thought was ballsy and hilarious, that it's just a you know, a big egg shaped with a butt, and it actually works. And you're like, yeah, that's the MAXX. You know, that's pretty cool that you can pull something like that off, honestly. Oh, the famous Deathmate Red. Got to dig through my box to see if maybe I have some of that Deathmate stuff. Not that it was that great, but, you know, it'd be something to review, look back on again. Some cool fan art there. Shaman's Tears, that was another odd kind of series for Image. And I say series, I think 2 issues came out. Yeah, don't know what happened with that. If anyone knows, please let me know in the comments. Deathmate Black was kind of cool. And yeah, that Image, I think from Darker Image probably. Always loved it. Another example of the MAXX's face kind of changing a little bit over time. Well, there you have it. That's a preview of issue 4, but we reviewed issue 3 today of the MAXX. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns relating to this issue, or any question I may have asked, please feel free to comment below. Subscribe if you enjoy the content and you have not done so before. And to those of you who have subscribed and are watching regularly, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I hope you're enjoying the content I put out, and hope everyone out there has an awesome day.
Like, subscribe, like, subscribe.
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KINGCOMICS.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.